Hello, everybody. We are back to talk with our author of the month, Dr. James Coakley, and he has written for us on the Gospel of Matthew. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Jamie.
Yes, he is the professor of Bible at Moody Bible Institute, and he's the author of the book we're giving away this month, 14 Fresh Ways to Enjoy the Bible. So if you haven't gotten your copy, hop over to our website when you're done here, and you can get one for yourself. It's a thank you for all of the friends who are donating to make this ministry possible, and we deeply appreciate your giving. Let's talk about a question that kind of percolated up as I read through your devotional, Jim. It's this: in the gospel, we're learning a lot about who Jesus is and how he interacted with his disciples, but also how he interacted with believers in a broader sense, and how he instructed us to um, to live in community. But one of the verses you said, Matthew 18, the verse 20 says, "For where two or three gather in my name, there am I with them." Now, that verse I've always heard applied to prayer meetings, right? I grew up in a little Baptist church, and we would have Wednesday night prayer meetings.
Mhm.
So we knew there was power in believers praying together. But you've given a little more depth and context to that verse. So tell us what else this might mean.
Yeah, I mean, certainly prayer is important, and we do want to have prayer in community. But the notion is like, well, is prayer only effective when we have more than one person? I don't
Mm,
think we would want to say that theologically. And so we have to look at, again, I teach hermeneutics, again, how to properly understand the Bible. And we always say context is the king. And so
hmm
really then as we look at the context of where Matthew 18:20 is, we realize that it's in the midst of not prayer, teaching on prayer, but in church discipline or restoring an erring brother or sister. And so it's in that context then that what's going on. And so quickly then I think we could understand to say that if you do the challenging work of trying to restore a erring brother or sister, think of me being right there with you in that challenging work. And so, where two or three are gathered in my name to restore one of these people, think of me being there right there alongside you in the ministry of reconciliation, of drawing people back. And really, we want people to, again, be restored, not to be disciplined and chastised. And
mm,
so, that hard work of discipline, which is really hard because nobody wants to confront anybody, especially in our culture, but if you do it right, if you do it with the right way, in the right spirit, and the right attitude, we should picture Jesus' presence right there with us. And that's why it's an important theme that fits along with the rest of the Gospel of Matthew and God's presence.
yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I agree with you. I'm not confrontational. I hate it. Why is it important, first of all, for us sometimes to confront a fellow believer?
Yeah, it's because, again, we want to live properly in community. And one of that is to call each other out when we do stupid things or we do things sinfully. And so,
hmm
again, let's broaden out the context here. And we can see why the goal of this confrontation is not just to call somebody out, but to bring them back in. Because right before this, in Matthew 18, we have the parable of the lost sheep, where Jesus says, hey, if there's a man who has 100 sheep and one goes out on its own, he leaves the 99 to go restore, bring that one back in. And then
mm
right on the heels of that, we have this issue of church discipline and the idea of restoring that person who has erred, who has fallen into sin. But then right afterwards, we have Peter's conversation with Jesus about forgiveness. How many times should I forgive? And again, it's 70 times 7, Jesus says. And so you can see it right away in the broader context of Matthew 18. This is not just about getting people together for prayer, as important as that is. There's other passages of Matthew that you could talk about prayer from. But here it's in the context of we want to restore the person who's wandered off, like the one sheep who's left the fold. And then we want to forgive that person, even
mm.
up to 70 times 7. And so the notion of reconciliation, of restoration is very, very strong in this chapter. And so this is just part of that triad trio of passages that all make that point very, very clear.
Yeah, I like how you're weaving that thread from, all the passages that came before that verse to afterwards, that it makes sense where this appears, not just what it's saying.
And that's really the beauty of, as an author, you get to select what you want to include. And
Hmm.
so sometimes we as Bible readers think of these as separate incidents. But no, really, they're being stitched together in a certain order, in a certain way. They're juxtaposed, they're put next to each other because there's themes that are, in a sense, kind of being woven throughout every one of the episodes, and they're not standalone units. And that's why, reading Bible in its full context, reading large sections, and most of the month we're reading through each chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, and that hopefully will kind of broaden the context here where sometimes we just take a verse out like where two or three are gathered in my name, and it's easy to kind of begin to misapply it or
Hmm.
use it in ways that the biblical author Matthew never intended.
Yeah, that's true. It's a and the practical level. So if one of us has a need to talk to a fellow believer about sin, what
Right.
advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, again, we want to keep the circle of offense as small as need be. So you don't go out and start broadcasting it, gossiping, talking to
Mhm.
others about it. You go to that person privately. So there's a sense of, decency and doing things in order. So because hopefully the first attempt at conversation on that topic is successful and draws them back into the right path, as it were.
Mhm.
But then, of course, as it doesn't progress as should be, then you bring in more and more people. And so there's greater, dare we say, social pressure to kind of hopefully get that person to conform to biblical standards. And so, but notice we do it gently, we do it quietly, we don't do it in a way to just be angry and vindictive and to say, man, look at the harm you caused. It's because we do want the community. We want people to be part of the 100
Mm.
rather than going off on our own. We want people to forgive each other in the next episode. So we want certainly to realize that people do wander off, that people do need forgiveness. And so if we do that work as hard as it is, like you say, we do so with God's presence, with Jesus right there in our midst. And that's really should hopefully encourage us to do the hard work of coming to people that we know and love and lovingly confront them with the right
Mm.
path,
Yeah, and bathing all of it in prayer, right? Because
bathing it all in prayer.
Mhm. Because God will give you words to say sometimes.
And I think that's the point of I'm right there with you. I'm going to help you with this. So I'll give you the words to say. I'll give you, the right in a sense spirit in which to approach this. And so that way, then it becomes a God moment
Mm.
where if it's done rightly, then that person really can't help but realize that this is really the Spirit and Jesus at work to try to bring them back into right relationship.
Amen. I love that. That's great advice. And we hope that you continue to read with us. We're only halfway through the book. And so there's more to come in this gospel. Thank you, Jim, for writing this study. And we will look forward to the rest of it.
I do as well, and I hope our listeners really get to sense God's presence as they read through the Gospel of Matthew the rest of this month.